Have you ever found yourself chugging down a can of Red Bull, thinking you're about to conquer the world? Or maybe you've had one too many, feeling like you could lift a car and then crash harder than a toddler at bedtime? What's the deal with this energy drink? Is it really giving you wings, or is it just a ticket to a caffeine-fueled roller coaster of chaos? Stick around, because we're diving deep into the wild world of Red Bull, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Let's kick things off with a little quiz. How many of you have ever experienced that moment where you're staring at your computer screen at 2 a.m., fueled by nothing but sheer willpower and a can of Red Bull? Raise your hand if you've ever felt like you were on top of the world, only to crash and burn like a meteor entering the atmosphere. And what about the taste? Is it just me, or does it taste like a mix between battery acid and liquid sugar? I mean, who decided that this was a good idea? What's next? A drink that tastes like regret and bad decisions. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what's really in that shiny can. You might think you're getting a boost of energy, but let's break down the ingredients. First up, we have caffeine. Yes, the magical little bean that keeps millions of us functioning. But let's not forget that Red Bull contains about 80 milligrams of caffeine per can. That's roughly the same as drinking a cup of coffee, but with a twist. Because what's better than a little caffeine? How about a hefty dose of sugar to go along with it? A single can of Red Bull packs in about 27 grams of sugar. That's like drinking a soda with a side of hyperactivity. You might feel like a superhero for a hot minute, but trust me, the crash will hit you like a freight train. And here's the kicker. Red Bull isn't just about caffeine and sugar. Oh no, it gets weirder. Ever heard of taurine? It's one of the key ingredients in Red Bull. And while it's often touted as a magical amino acid that boosts performance, the truth is a bit murkier. It's found naturally in your body, but when you're guzzling down a can, you're consuming it in doses that are, let's say, a tad excessive. Who knew we were all just one can away from being a walking science experiment? Now let's talk about the energy part. You've heard the slogan, Red Bull gives you wings. But does it really? Or is it more like Red Bull gives you a temporary illusion of flight, followed by a harsh reality check? Sure, you might feel invincible for a few hours, but that's just the caffeine and sugar playing tricks on your brain. It's like a magic show where the rabbit never comes out of the hat. You're left wondering what just happened and why you suddenly feel like you've been hit by a bus. And let's not forget about the health implications. Oh, you thought we were done? Not even close. Studies have shown that excessive consumption of energy drinks like Red Bull can lead to a myriad of health issues. We're talking heart palpitations, anxiety, and even insomnia. So while you're out there trying to pull an all-nighter fueled by your favorite energy drink, remember that your heart might be plotting its own escape plan. Not to mention the sugar content can lead to weight gain and other metabolic issues. It's like a double whammy of bad decisions packed into a single can. Now, I know what you're thinking, but it's just a drink. I can handle it. Sure, you might think you're invincible, but let's face it, we've all seen that friend who takes it too far. You know the one. They're bouncing off the walls, talking a mile a minute, and suddenly they're convinced they can take on the world. Next thing you know, they're attempting to juggle flaming swords or trying to convince you that they can fly. Spoiler alert, they can't. And the aftermath? A crash that hits harder than a reality check after a wild night out. And let's not even get started on the marketing. Red Bull has mastered the art of branding. They've turned energy drinks into a lifestyle. You see athletes chugging it down, extreme sports enthusiasts living the Red Bull life. And suddenly it's not just a drink, it's a badge of honor. But let's be real, how many of those athletes are actually downing cans of Red Bull before a big game? Spoiler alert, probably not as many as you think. It's all smoke and mirrors, folks. The reality is that these athletes are likely relying on good old-fashioned training and a balanced diet. But hey, who needs that when you can slap a Red Bull logo on your shirt and call it a day? Now let's talk about the hangover. Oh yes, the infamous Red Bull hangover. You know, that delightful feeling of waking up the next morning, head pounding, heart racing, and your stomach doing somersaults. It's like a party in your head, and everyone's invited. You might have felt like a rock star the night before, but now you're just a walking advertisement for regret. And the worst part, you're probably reaching for another can, convinced that it'll fix everything. Spoiler alert, it won't. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Just a terrible idea all around. So what's the conclusion? Is Red Bull the elixir of life or just a sugary trap waiting to ensnare the unsuspecting? The answer is clear. While it might give you a temporary boost, the long-term effects are anything but glamorous. It's a roller coaster ride of highs and lows, and trust me, the lows are not worth the thrill. You might feel like you're flying high for a few hours, but eventually gravity catches up with you, and you're left wondering why you thought it was a good idea in the first place. So the next time you find yourself reaching for that can of Red Bull, take a moment to think. Do you really want to ride the caffeine wave? Or would you rather stick to good old-fashioned coffee? At least with coffee, you know what you're getting into. It's a classic, a staple, and while it might not come with the flashy marketing, it won't leave you feeling like you've been run over by a truck the next morning. In conclusion, Red Bull might give you wings, but those wings are made of sugar and caffeine, and they're bound to crash eventually. So my friends, the next time you're tempted to reach for that can, remember this. Sometimes the best energy boost comes from a good night's sleep and a balanced diet. Who needs wings when you can soar through life with a clear head and a healthy body? Cheers to that.